The night in the farthest reaches of the haunted forest was not merely cold but ancient, as though every breath of wind carried a memory older than the first men, older than leaf or stone. It whispered through black pines whose trunks bowed under hoarfrost like penitents, sighed across frozen streams, sealed under mirror-slick panes, and gathered itself in the ruin of a forgotten weirwood grove, where every heart face had been flayed away by time. Here, beneath a sky the color of bruised bone, the Night King stood motionless at the heart of his own silence. His raiment was frost and midnight. Ice plated his torso in interlocking scales that caught the dim starlight and fractured it into ghostly rainbows. Horns, not grown, but sculpted by sorcery, crowned his skull in jagged points, frost-blue flames dancing along their edges. Yet it was his eyes that commanded the darkness, twin shards of captured stars, colder than the void between them. They regarded the horizon beyond the wall, beyond the southern wilds, toward a world that had dared forget him. Beside him knelt 12 of his lieutenants, gaunt pale, armored in rime-forged mail that steamed faintly as if exhaling the warmth of slaughtered suns. They shared their sovereign's stillness, but within each of their hollow chests, the storm of Undeath swirled impatiently. All waited for his command, for the work that would alter the known laws of wind and wing. The Night King raised one hand. At his gesture, the winds died. A vast hush cloaked the forest as though the world itself leaned near to listen. He spoke no words. Sound was for the fragile quick. Instead, he allowed his intent to flood the realm of spirit like moonlight, across black water, far in the south, where dragon skulls brooded in vaulted gloom beneath the Red Keep. Ancient bones stirred. King's Landing had never truly slept. Even in the dead of night, torches guttered along the mud gate, taverns in Flea Bottom clattered with dice and rough laughter, and the Red Keep's ramparts rattled with gossip, carried on salt air. Yet on this night, a strange stillness fell, as if the city strained to hear some distant music. Deep beneath Maegor's holdfast lay the skull crypts, a colossal gallery hewn of bedrock, each alcove housing the remains of House Targaryen's vanished glory. Merax's leered with jagged fangs. Vagar's skull stretched half a hall. But it was Balerion, Black Dread, whose bones devoured the darkness, eye sockets wide enough to swallow horse and rider, jaw like an opened gate to the abyss. Cobwebs had long replaced glory here. Dust softened the iron hoops that once displayed his skull, and sleeping bats nested in hollow nostrils. That dust stirred now. A tremor rippled through stone older than Aegon's conquest. Cobwebs tore loose and drifted like torn sails. A low groan, less heard than felt, echoed along vaulted crosses. In the chill stillness, a brittle fracture traced its way along the iron clamps that pinned Balerion's jaw. One by one they snapped with ringing metallic cries. The watchman posted at the crypt entrance, a pot-bellied veteran named Haresh, started upright. He carried a spear more ceremonial than lethal, and a lantern that hissed with whaled oil flame. For years his duty had been dull. Keep sellswords from prying loose dragon teeth, rumored to cure impotence, or carve charms from scales, long powdered into dust. Tonight, when the first iron clamp shattered, he thought he dreamt thunder. When the second rang out, cold certainty pierced him. He shuffled forward, lantern high, the pool of light trembling across the floor. "Who's there?" His voice cracked the hush like a pebble through ice. "Answer." Silence answered, but not silence alone. Something moved just beyond the lantern's timid glow. A ripple in blackness, a sigh like breath between mountains. Then came the exhale, air whistling through Balerion's monstrous fangs as the Black Dread's skull jerked upon its iron cradle. Bone grated against stone. A jaw that had not moved since the reign of Jaehaerys flexed, exhuming dust, thick as smoke. Haresh's scream never left his throat. The lantern crashed to the flagstones, shattering glass and spewing oil. Flames skittered like spiders, then died. Darkness swallowed all. But in that darkness, an azure candle flared to life within Balerion's depths. 2 pinpoints of merciless, imperial ice. North of the wall, on a ridge overlooking Frostfangs, the Night King watched the firmament. A thin smear of color limned one horizon. Southern lights, a spectral bruise blossoming at the edge of night. The bond was forged. His thoughts coursed through leagues of frozen ether, yoking dead dragon to sovereign will. The work ahead would be delicate. Bones were not enough. Flesh given to fire must be remade as ice. He would need more than sorcery. He would need the very marrow of winter. And for that, the wall itself must open. He turned to his captains. The nearest, narrow of face and plated in ice-colored iron, inclined his head the barest fraction. The Night King lifted both arms. Behind him, the forest erupted in movement. Thousands of corpses, preserved by the endless chill, rose beneath carapaces of frost. Warriors who had perished in bronze mail 6 centuries past. Wildlings and rangers whose blood still stained broken shafts. Giants, mammoths, direwolves, elk, even the scattered nests of silk-winged frostworms no bigger than a man's fist. All answered the silent summons. Together, they formed a tide that glittered beneath the moon, a tide ready to drown the realms of men. But not yet. Patience, the Night King had learned during his lifetimes beyond counting, is the truest blade. Let men fear the rumors first. Let their councils bicker over ghosts in crypts, while ravens whisper of dead kings, raising dead dragons. Terror was sweetest when steeped. He extended one finger toward the wall. At that gesture, the white tide receded, merging back into the tree line, vanishing beneath fresh fallen snow, until the forest appeared empty as before. Only the wind remained, and the slow, inexorable pulse of sorcery reaching south. Old Town, 300 leagues distant, slumbered beneath a drizzling fog that left rooftops slick and the Hightower's beacon blurred behind curtains of mist. Yet in the citadel's tallest spire the candles still burned. Archmaester Marwyn, broad-shouldered as a blacksmith and twice as grim, traced a gloved thumb across a raven's leg. Again, he said. The novice, sleepless and pale, read the message. Vulture's Roost reports curtain of aurora over Dornish sky. Temperature fell 9 degrees in a single hour. Livestock froze in pens. Wells iced solid. Marwyn grunted. The Southron sky has no business with lights that belong to the shivering sea. He strode to a long table cluttered with scrolls and cracked tablets. A dusty folio lay open, its high Balerion cursive curling like smoke. He planted a finger on a passage. Valerio Ivestret Greji Udrunsmi R Ka Kabe Vizi, Druta, Es Suntan. Blood of the dragon may slumber, yet bone remembers flame. Or cold? The novice swallowed. You think it's true, Archmaester? That something stirs the old skulls? I think, Marwyn said, that when the wind begins speaking languages no man taught it, wise men listen. From a shelf, he drew down a sphere of milky crystal, dragon glass, fused in the fires of Valyria and veined with crimson. Within its depths, shadows churned. He pressed both palms against it and closed his eyes. For heartbeat upon heartbeat, nothing. Then the sphere chilled, frost creeping along its surface despite the brazier's heat. Marwyn's breath fogged the air. Images flickered, a vast skull yawning in darkness, eyes burning blue fire. A frozen grove where a horned figure raised his hand, and time itself seemed to kneel. Marwyn recoiled. Frostbitten patches blossomed on his gloves. He tore them off, flinging them aside. Send ravens, he rasped. Winterfell, Dragonstone. Storm's End, the wall. The long night never died. It only slept. On Dragonstone, storm clouds boiled black and purple over the castle's volcanic spires. Daenerys Targaryen paced the map chamber, hands clasped tight behind her back. The painted table gleamed beneath dozens of candles. Beside her sat Tyrion Lannister, reading a raven's letter by lamplight. And Jon Snow, the king in the north, silent, wolf-gray eyes fixed on the dancing flames. More dead towns, Tyrion murmured. Croft west of Blackhaven buried in snowdrifts taller than their watchtower. Dozens gone, no sign of struggle, only frost. He looked up. It's early summer. We knew the Night King would move, John said. We did not know he could move the sky. Daenerys halted. Her silver hair shimmered in the lamplight like moonlit surf. Dragons can warm the world, she said. Fire for ice. Yet Viserion fell to him. He seeks more, came a voice from the doorway. Melisandre, red silks rustling, glided into the chamber. Her eyes, dark as garnets, reflected the storm lanterns. I have walked the beach and prayed to the flames, she said. They show me great bones wreathed in frost fire, blackened wings beating again, but made of night. A dread once called, Balerion reborn to the Night King's will. A chill brushed Daenerys' spine. She glanced toward the distant courtyard where Drogon and Rhaegal slumbered under chain and guard. Balerion's skull rests in King's Landing. Melisandre shook her head. Not anymore. Tyrion shut the letter. Then we must assume our enemy commands an ice dragon of incomparable size. The maps mean nothing if the sky itself rebels, Jon said. Our strategy must change. Daenerys rested both palms upon the painted table. Across its surface, carved forests and rivers lay blanketed in shifting candlelit shadows. Already winter's caress upon the realm. Tell me what we must do, Jon Snow, and we will do it. He met her gaze. We gather every smith who has ever known Dragonbone. We rally the children's secrets, the Citadel's lore. Every scrap Bran can glean from his visions. We prepare to fight a nightmare older than history. Tyrion exhaled. And we pray the wall still holds. Yet the wall did not. At Eastwatch by the sea, the night watchman peered into gloom and found it staring back. The tide had retreated under a rimed moon, exposing black sand glittering with ice crystals. Something glimmered beyond the surf, a line of frost advancing slow but inexorable across wet stone. The watchman jogged to the edge of the wooden palisade. Salt wind whipped his cloak. Seabirds shrieked overhead. He squinted. Out on the strand, spears of ice erupted from the ground. First one, then 5, then dozens, each taller than a man. They groaned, twisting into spirals like stalagmites born in seconds. Between them, a low fog rose, spreading tendrils. He shouted for the duty sergeant. By the time the sergeant reached the rampart, the beach had vanished beneath a white crust. Cracks spidered across it. Then fissures yawned. From those fissures burst figures, gaunt corpses rimed in crystal, eyes burning with the same cold stars that now lit the skulls of dead dragons far to the south. The watchman fumbled his horn. Chill numbed his fingers to ivory stumps. He blew, and the note croaked out feeble, strangled by fear. From the sea, a deeper gloom emerged. A shape vast as legend, wings unfurling like storm clouds. The ice dragon rose, forged from the bones of Balerion, sheathed in translucent armor of frozen tears. When its chest expanded, the air itself screamed. It exhaled a torrent, not of flame, but of hushed oblivion. A breath that sucked all heat, all sound, all life from the world. The wave of frost struck the wall, and 3 centuries of stone and spell convulsed in agony. Blue cracks latticed upward, each cobwebbing fracture a heartbeat in the wall's mortality. The Night King rode astride the dragon's neck. He did not raise a blade or roar triumph. He merely watched as the wall's enchantments, born of child and man, flickered like dying torches. Ice met ice, and the older, crueler ice triumphed. A section of the wall, 300 yards wide, exploded outward in a cataract of pulverized crystal. Towers toppled, battlements folded like parchment. Eastwatch, proud sentinel of a bygone age, vanished beneath an avalanche into the hungry sea. And through the wound stepped the dead. Bran Stark felt the wall shatter before ravens carried the news. In the Godswood at Winterfell, he slumped against the weirwood's trunk. Eyes rolled white. Sweat beaded his brow despite frost in the air. Through countless wings he watched the breach, seas boiling into mist as ice breath turned surf to jagged spires, corpses surging forward, an ice-crusted dragon whose wings eclipsed the stars. Terror snarled through every feather. He tried to steer the ravens south, to warn, to see. But the Night King's gaze snapped upward. Blue fire speared the flock. Bran recoiled, consciousness tumbling back into his crippled body. He gasped, tasted blood. He whispered. He rides Balerion. Arya knelt beside him, gloved hand on his shoulder. Her gray eyes burned with questions. Bran shook his head. Tell Jon, he rasped. Tell them all. Far below King's Landing, in the tunnel networks once carved as escape routes by Maegor, the cruel hoofbeats clattered. A lone horse burst from darkness, its rider hunched low. Sandor Clegane guided the mare with brutal urgency, torch held high. Behind him, the city's foundations trembled. He had seen the impossible. A skull of blackened bone ripped through brick and mortar like a leviathan breaching surf, then ascend upon wings of living frost, leaving the Red Keep gutted. He spat curses too blistering for even Flea-Bottom's ears. Bloody dead dragon, he growled. Bloody burning cold. Yet he rode, for somewhere ahead Sansa Stark awaited extraction, and vows once scorned now bound his scarred heart. On Dragonstone, Drogon stirred. Chains rattled as he lifted a titanic head, pupils slitting to knife-thin verticals. He scented the wind blowing east through open gates, wind that carried frost where only salt should live. He roared. The sound sundered clouds, shook ramparts, toppled braziers. Rhaegal answered, wings beating thunder. Soldiers scattered, some clutching spears, most merely praying. Daenerys stood atop the stone drum, hair whipping. Easy, she murmured, though they could not hear. Beneath her breastplate, her heart hammered. She felt it too, the challenge in the sky, the ancient siblings' call. Fire against ice, life against unlife. Tyrion emerged onto the parapet, cloak snapping. A raven from the wall, breached, Eastwatch fallen. Daenerys closed her eyes. Then the world turns to the song my family promised. And I must sing louder. She raised her hand toward Drogon. The great wyvern's mania steadied as his queen's scent reached him. She climbed onto his shoulders, armor glinting red in torchlight. Jon Snow, sword at hip, mounted Rhaegal nearby. Though the dragon writhed at the unfamiliar rider, it took all Jon's quiet will, all whatever bloodline whispered between them, to saddle the beast. They rose together into a sky bruising before dawn. Far off, beyond veil of cloud, a star flared blue, cold, and pitiless. Wind screamed. Ash or snow, who could know? In whirlwinds around them. 5 hours, Daenerys thought, the length of one long vigil. In that span the world may live or die. Yet this first clash would only begin the story, for ice and fire have danced since the first dawn, and neither will yield in a single night. She guided Drogon toward the smoldering horizon where an ice dragon's roar boomed like glaciers colliding. The long night had many verses left to sing, and she would answer each with flame. A.K. Wind knifed across the sky, an arctic gale laced with shards of sleet that hissed off Drogon's black scales. Daenerys pressed low against the dragon's ridged spine, fingers white on the smooth onyx of his neck plates. The salt stain from the sea below mingled with something sharper, colder, a scent like iron dust on frozen glass. Off her starboard wing, Rhaegal clawed the air in raw fury, emerald pinions beating turbulence into the clouds. Jon's silhouette, hunched and dark-cloaked, leaned into the dragon's crest, the loose ends of his fur collar streaming behind him as if already half consumed by storm. Lightning forked among the clouds, no thunder following. The flash threw monstrous shadows of the two dragons across the blanket of mist. Those shadows warped and coiled until they seemed echoes of the beasts they pursued. Phantoms racing toward a convergence no mortal flame had yet named. Daenerys tried to count heartbeats to steady herself, but time had been melted with the last spell on the wall. Each breath now belonged to chaos. She felt it before she saw it, a pulse in the air, like a single enormous drumbeat that resonated through bone as through horn. Drogon's wings faltered, tail flicking instinctively to stabilize. In the next instant, the sky ahead shattered, a wheeling shear of ice crystals erupting outward from a central point. A figure burst through the veil of cloud. Balerion reborn, colossal wings of lacquered bone, cloaked in plates of translucence. The light of the half-hidden moon refracted through those frozen armors, scattering prismatic rays that blinded as surely as any dragonflame. Atop that ruinous spine stood the Night King, posture stiff, arms extended as if conducting a symphony only he could hear. His eyes burned a merciless sapphire. With each downward beat of the ice dragon's wings, currents of frigid vapor rolled off the edges in spirals, congealing into spear-sharpened shards that trailed behind like an iron tail. Daenerys' pulse hammered in her throat. She leaned forward, voicing a single syllable, one forged in old Valyria and soaked in the blood of centuries. It was not a roar but a command. Rise. Drogon's chest expanded. Embers rippled beneath obsidian scales. The heat came off him in waves, turning falling sleet into erupting steam. He answered with a thunderous call that rumbled across the firmament, a challenge no mortal throat could utter. Jon's voice rose after hers, rough as gravel, yet resonant. Rhaegal, Daur. Not yet. Hold. Not see. The green dragon's jaws clacked shut with a burst of sparks, swallowing the urge to blast flame before the moment ripened. Below, the world yawed into view through tearing cloud. Frost-slick cliffs rimmed in crashing surf. Pines bent beneath rime, the dark glint of partially frozen channels weaving inland. Toward the west, Winterfell's lone beacon flared faint, a candle in endless night. To the east, the sea crawled with shards of pack ice that ground together like gnashing teeth. Balerion swung in a broad arc, the Night King guiding with minute shifts of balance more than reins. The undead Leviathan's maw opened, revealing a gullet lined with blue fire that did not flicker but thrummed, steady and terrible as a ravenous heart. When that breath bled into the sky, it came not as a torrent but as a cone of silence. Air itself crystallized, robbed of heat and sound. The cone widened until it seemed the entire firmament froze. Drogon banked hard. Daenerys clung tight as centrifugal force tried to tear her free. The frost breath missed by a margin of yards. Yet the chill licked the fringe of Drogon's wing membrane. In that single brush, veins of white spread across the gossamer black, leaving brittle edges that cracked like spun sugar. Drogon snarled, pain rippling along his flanks. Daenerys tasted iron where her teeth bit her lip. "Now!" she shouted. Drogon rolled into a dive directly toward the ice dragon, wings tucked. The air screamed past. Flames gathered at the pit of his throat, visible through his gaping jaws as a furnace's core. Daenerys felt her cloak spark at the edges. Drogon released, a column of wildfire bright enough to turn night to noon for an instant. It smashed into Balerion's right wing, a collision of infernos. Red gold fire meeting blue. The heat and cold detonated. Shockwave flinging snow in concentric rings for leagues. Cloud vaporized. A vacuum boom followed, rattling teeth. The blue fire quailed beneath the onslaught, but did not die. Instead, it blackened, absorbing, converting. Crystal layers melted, then in the same heartbeat refroze, now tempered and glass smooth as if the heat had only honed the armor. The Night King never faltered. He pivoted, guiding Balerion through the blast's fury until the dragon emerged, trailing rivulets of water that solidified into icicle spears. Above, Jon spurred Rhaegal into a steep climb, using updraft from the explosion to catapult higher. He scanned for a weakness. Joints, eyes, the ragged rim of exposed ancient bone. Rhaegal hissed, tail lashing. Jon saw what the dragon saw. A network of fissures spiderwebbing Balerion's belly where old marrow hadn't fused seamlessly with new crystal. Vulnerable, perhaps. "Dracarys," Jon commanded for the first time in his life. Rhaegal inhaled. Flames churned like molten copper between daggered teeth, and loosed a stream that cut across the night like a whip. The fire struck true on the underbelly. Cracks widened. Shards burst. An unearthly scream, deeper than thunder, rolled from Balerion's maw jaw. Yet still the ice dragon kept aloft, tail thrashing, spattering chunks of frozen bone that fell miles below. The Night King raised one palm. Fragments of shattered ice and bone hung midair around him, arrested as if time had stilled. Jon had mere moments to register the impossible before the fragments shot outward like slingstones, dozens of jagged missiles converging. The first slammed Rhaegal's right flank, driving deep. A second clipped the joint of the dragon's wing, shearing tendon. Rhaegal reeled, roar fractured by pain. Jon's world spun. Sky, sea, sky. He cinched legs beneath the saddle rigging, clung with everything left of his fading strength. Drogon surged upward, interposing himself between the falling green and the relentless barrage. Fragmented spears shattered against his armored chest, deflected by centuries of genetic memory that hardened Targaryen dragons against even dragon steel. Still, each impact left a crater of scaled flesh, seething red. Daenerys howled wordless fury. The Night King pointed two fingers skyward. The cloud bank above responded, swirling into a vortex. A disk of blue lightning circled the spiral like a crown. From its eye descended spears of solidified hail, thicker than ship masts. They plunged earthward in a slow-motion rain, each trailing mist like comet tails. One drove through Drogon's left shoulder. A geyser of embers erupted where hot blood met supernatural frost. Drogon shrieked. Daenerys felt the sound vibrate inside her lungs. Below, Winterfell braces rattled as the unnatural hail hammered the courtyard. Soldiers ran for cover. The great weirwood lost 2 branches in deafening cracks. Bran, within the keep's highest chamber, reached into the storm with invisible tendrils of sight. He risked his mind against that cold radiance, searching for the pulse of the one who puppeteered the sky. Every moment exposed him to a pain too vast for flesh. Yet he clung. He must find the hinge on which the Night King's sorcery swung. He found it 1,000 feet above in the flux between storm layers, a spiral of runes invisible to ordinary sight, carved into the very wind. They rotated like gears, each one a word older than language, turning the blizzard's engine. If those gears stopped, the storm would fracture. Bran's heart hammered. He forced his consciousness into the spiral's heart and spoke, as the three-eyed raven had taught. In the first dawn tongue, shaping a single counterglyph forged of memory and name. Stark. The spiral shuddered. Ice exploded outward, as if repelled by a geyser of heat. High above, the hail spigot faltered. Balerion's next breath misfired. Frost roiled erratically, half-formed. A string had been plucked from the Night King's harp, and the discord rippled down his arm. For the first time, his crystalline eyes narrowed with something that might have been caution. Daenerys felt the shift. The cold less certain, the emergent chaos slackening. She tugged Drogon's reins of leather-braided steel, signaling a dive past Balerion's wounded flank. As they passed, she drew the Valyrian steel dagger hidden at her hip, its glassy ripples etched in black smoke patterns. With a primal cry, she plunged the blade between 2 exposed ribs. The dagger sunk to the hilt. Blue fire jetted from the wound, dousing her glove in hoarfrost so brutal it burned. She yanked free, leaving a severed chunk of dying magic behind. The Night King turned, tracking the arc of her dive. He lifted an arm, yet before he could command the sky again, a wolf's son's roar tore through the air. Jon had not fallen. Rhaegal, battered, now renewed by vengeance, climbed under the wind created by Drogon's descent. Jon guided in close, leapt from saddle to Balerion's spine, boots sliding over ice-slick vertebrae. He landed crouched, long claw already drawn, the sword's pale steel reflecting both moonlight and quartz fire. For one heartbeat night, King and Jon Snow regarded each other atop the fractured ridge of the ancient dragon. No words passed, none could bear meaning here. The sword swung. The long night answered with a blade of living ice that bled from the Night King's palm, forming as though grown from air. Steel met ice. Sparks burst blue and silver. The collision reverberated down the spine, echoed in Jon's bones. Despite magic, despite kings, despite apocalypse, the duel belonged to the raw clash of wills. Jon pressed an overhand blow. The Night King parried, pivoted, lines of pale frost racing each time their blades crossed. If a nick touched Jon's flesh, cold would spread like infection. He fainted low, then thrust. The Night King sidestepped with preternatural grace, letting the sword ring off a frozen scale. Blue eyes never blinked. More strikes. Jon's lungs seared. He fought as he once fought at Hardhome, as he fought Ramsay, as he fought the living and the dead. All distilled to this blade, this breath, this bolt of fear held captive in his ribs. A sudden buck of Balerion's spine threw them apart. Drogon had struck again, talons raking across the ice plating, carving crevasses from neck to mid-back. The undead dragon banked, wings faltering. Jon slid, scrabbling futilely for purchase on slick bone. At the last instant, he caught a protruding rib fragment. Long Claw tumbled from his grip, disappearing into the gale. The Night King used the momentum, pivoting and driving his frostblade toward Jon's exposed chest. Rhaegal rammed from below. The impact jolted the Night King off balance. He stumbled, losing clear line for the killing stroke. Jon strained upward, drawing the dragonglass dagger at his belt. A whisper of his father's voice, dead yet never gone, echoed, "When the moment comes, strike true." He plunged the blade into a fractured Drogon's talons had carved. It pierced the Night King's calf. Frost blossomed up the dagger's black glass. A spiderweb of shattering runes. The Night King recoiled, eyes flaring hotter, but his stance faltered. The sky, sensing the falter, cracked again. But this time with thunder. Real thunder, carrying the full-throated roar of a summer tempest, roused from slumber. Rain fell, warm rain, slicing curtains that hissed where they met the preternatural cold. It steamed off Balerion's scales. It wreathed Drogon in writhing coils like serpents of mist. That steam coalesced into clouds of obscuring vapor. Vision dwindled to silhouettes and strobing flashes of heat lightning. In the blindness, Drogon circled wide, guided by Daenerys' knees. She felt half-blind herself, tears of hot rain blurring the world. She listened, beyond wind, beyond dragon shrieks, for Jon's voice or Rhaegal's cry. Nothing. The world reduced to the heartbeat thunder inside her ears. She recalled a night long ago on the Dothraki Sea when she had stepped into Khal Drogo's funeral pyre and emerged mother of dragons. The rain tonight felt like those flames reversed, water scorching what could never burn. She whispered a prayer, not to gods who had broken promises, but to her children of scale and storm. Then she pitched Drogon down through the murk, trusting instinct. They erupted mere yards beneath Balerion's bulk. The ice dragon wheeled upward, struggling for altitude, a maelstrom of wind buffeting his ravaged wings. On his back, Jon clung one-handed, silhouette small against the giant's expanse. Daenerys spurred Drogon faster. She extended her free hand, fingers splayed. She stretched every fiber of reach, voice raw as she screamed his name. Jon heard, just. He looked, eyes wide in the furnace glow cast by Drogon's throat. Between them a scythe of empty air yawned, but hope bridged it. He gathered his last strength, kicked away from fractured bone, and leapt. For a heartbeat he flew weightless, wind hollowing his lungs, the storm devouring sound. Then Daenerys' hand closed around his wrist. Arm muscles burned as she hauled him onto Drogon's back behind her. Rain-slick leather slid, but Jon's other hand found a ridge, locked tight. Deprived of its rider's absolute focus, Balerion thrashed. The Night King staggered near the dragon's spinal fin, balance compromised. Bruised clouds parted to reveal the moon, bright as a blade. Its white glare limned the dragonglass still embedded in his calf, vein lines of crackling indigo, spidering outward. He yanked the shard free, and where it exited, vapor burst. The wound sealed with frost, though a tremor betrayed pain he'd not shown before. Drogon rose again, wings raking air. Rhaegal, wing torn but still fighting, limped along at lower altitude. Jon glanced at his blood-ruined hand. Numb white, kissed by near frostbite, and then at Daenerys. Their gazes tethered amid chaos. He searched her expression for despair, found only fury tempered by the steel of dragons. He leaned forward to murmur near her ear, voice hoarse. Bran's broken something in his magic. We press now or never. She nodded once, Hold tight. She guided Drogon into a steep climb above Balerion's thrashing form, leveraging altitude. Rain turned to steam in the dragon's furnace heat. When they reached the apex, she gave the ancient command, Dracarys. Flame erupted, but this time not a lance. It blossomed like a flower, a sphere drawn from the deepest pits of Drogon's fire glands. The heat peeled layers off atmosphere, a mini-sun birthed in storm. As it descended, Daenerys banked away. The inferno fell upon Balerion like a meteor. Scales of ice shrieked vapor. Cracks, hairline and subtle, became ravines gushing steam. Blue fire roared in rebellion, but red overcame. Molten rivers flowed over skeletal wings, dripping like volcanic glass. One wing membrane tore entire, ripped free by its own weight. The undead dragon's roar wavered between agony and rage as gravity reclaimed its due. The Night King, through the inferno, still stood, though hunched. He raised both arms, palms splayed, commanding currents unseen. The air around him solidified into a bubble of translucent frost, shielding him from the full wrath of flames. Through that shield he glared upward, at Daenerys' silhouette astride living fire. Rhaegal, ragged but resolute, executed a last blazing pass. Green gold fire licked the base of Balerion's tail, severing flesh and bone weakened by earlier barrage. The tail disconnected, spinning into spiral descent. Without tail and port wing, Balerion's center of gravity shattered. The ice dragon canted sideways, spiraling. Its altitude hemorrhaged. The Night King crouched, embedding ice claws into spinal ridges to prevent being flung free. He whispered fresh sigils into the wind. Cold condensed, forging a half-grown wing of crystal to replace the missing appendage. Yet each conjuration strained him. The cracks in his calf bled light, and for the first time his breath misted. A sign he felt the cold. Below, Winterfell's defenders watched the duel of gods as ants observe thunderheads. Bran's mind hovered at the edge of exhaustion, holding that counterglyph against the weight of ages. He sensed the Night King's distraction, perceived a vacuum in the great wheel of his will. Bran pushed, carving another glyph into the air, shaped like the weirwood's face without its eyes. It anchored to the very heartbeat of winter. The Night King jerked, eyes narrowing. He turned his head, scanning through miles of cloud and charred ice, seeking the unseen architect of resistance. In that momentary lapse, Jon lifted the recovered longclaw. Drogon's earlier dive had scooped the blade from where it lodged in ice-plated armor. Jon gambled everything on this final pass. Drogon plunged once more, but not to burn. Jon rose, precarious, balancing along the ridge of scales, sword raised over shoulder in two-hand grip. As they screamed past, within a dragon's breath of Balerion's spine, Jon leapt again, a comet trailing steel. He landed amid slippery frost, knees bending to absorb impact. The Night King whirled, ice blades singing. Jon met it mid-arc. The clang sent sparks across the maelstrom. They dueled with no footing, each step on cracking sheets. Jon forced inside guard, wrestling wrist to wrist. Breath burst from his chest in ragged plumes. He slammed pommel to the Night King's jaw. A jolt, but no blood, only fractures that healed as soon as they formed. The ice blade flashed, nicked Jon's forearm. Whiteness spidered under his skin until his fiery human blood boiled it away. He spotted his chance. The crack in ice armor where the calf wound radiated. He kicked, heel striking the fissure. The Night King staggered. Jon swung long claw in a horizontal arc, but the blade cleaved through shoulder joint at the base of the left wing. Shards erupted. The strike did not kill, but momentum carried the Night King sideways, off balance, toward the void. Balerion lurched, winged stubs flailing. In the whirlpool of air, Jon and Night King teetered. Jon lunged with shoulder, both toppled, sliding down the dragon's slick side. The Night King's ice claws scrabbled for purchase but caught only melting plates. Jon grappled his waist, refusing to let the ancient terror free to summon more sorcery. They plunged together. Daenerys screamed. Drogon spiraled after, folding wings to arrow. Rhaegal, wounded, tried but lagged. Air shrieked. Thermals buffeted. Jon and the Night King spun through steam and shattered ice, twinned meteors of life and death. As they fell, the Night King battered Jon's skull with fists like frozen mallets. Jon's vision mottled. Blood poured from temple, painting wind crimson. Yet he clung, using fury as fetter. At 200 feet above ground, the Night King summoned a disk of ice to break the fall. It materialized beneath them, a platform rushing upward. Jon wrenched an arm free, slashing Longclaw across the Night King's wrist. The conjuration flickered, disk fracturing before fully solid. They plunged again. 50 feet. Bran cried out, funneling the last of his strength into a final sigil. Not attack, but tether. It lashed around the Night King's shattered calf, a chain of memory and bone. The memories of every Stark who had died defending the realm, every name carved on tombs hewn into Winterfell's crypts. The chain yanked, halting the Night King's fall in midair, leaving Jon to fall alone. But Drogon was there, colossal wings flaring to arrest descent. Jon collided against the leathery hide, arms wrapping instinctively around a neck spike. The impact stung, ribs bruised, yet he lived. Daenerys guided Drogon upward, just as the Night King strained against the chain of memory. Frost bled into the sigil, cracking links. He tore free, but precious seconds passed. Seconds in which he hung exposed. Rhaegal, mustering final reserves, charged from below. Green fire spewed from his maw, engulfing the Night King from hip to crown. The flame collided against ancient magic, but the earlier wounds, the dragonglass fissures, Bran's chain, all had weakened the armor. Blue ice shattered under green furnace. The Night King screamed, a sound not mortal but the death whistle of glaciers. Frostblade melted in his grip. Daenerys signaled Drogon. A last column of red gold fire surged. It crashed into the green, merging into a swirl of molten light that swallowed the Night King whole. Within that cosmic furnace, ancient runes split, memories unwound. For an instant, his eyes remained, twin stars in the storm. Then they imploded, leaving only afterimages burned into retinas of every creature that bore witness. When the fires cleared, snowflakes drifted where the Night King had hung. They melted before touching ground. Balerion's carcass, deprived of master, crashed into the sea miles off Winterfell's coast. The impact sent tidal waves radiating toward icy shores. Steam hissed where hot currents met supernatural chill. On Winterfell's ramparts, a stunned hush overtook the defenders. The storm subsided, clouds parting to reveal constellations unmarred. Bran's consciousness retreated to his body. He slumped, eyes normal. Arya caught him before he fell. Tears, half relief, half exhaustion, cut clean tracks through soot on her cheeks. Dawn breached. True dawn, rosy and gold, spilled across the field of battle. Snowmelt dripped from arrow scars in stone. Deerwolves howled an ancient dirge. A song of endings, yes, but more so of beginnings. Above, Drogon and Rhaegal circled once, twice, 3 times, the dance of siblings, marking territory. Then they descended toward Winterfell's inner bailey, talons settling with the rumble of minor earthquakes. Jon slid first, landing hard but steady. Daenerys leapt nimbly after. For a long heartbeat, they simply stood, breathing steam into cold morning, listening to the world settle. Words finally came, brittle as ice crystals. "It's done," Jon rasped. Daenerys looked east where the sun lifted. Her eyes, violet and wide, reflected dawnfire. "For now," she said. "But winter always returns." Jon's gaze tracked hers. Beyond horizon lay King's Landing, half ruined by the undead dragon's escape. Beyond that, tides of smallfolk terror, lords' panic, opportunists sharpening blades in smoke-shrouded alleys. Yet also beyond lay children yet unborn, fields yet sown, halls where songs would recount this night, until memory itself grew old. He took her hand, their fingers laced, gritty with soot and frozen rain. Above, Drogon's massive head lowered, golden eye regarding them with unreadable depth. Daenerys squeezed Jon's hand once. "Then, we will be ready." Far to the north, in the haunted forest, a wind rustled through pines. It carried the faintest echo of breaking ice, no more than a whisper now. Yet under snowbanks, scattered bones of 1,000 fallen whites glimmered, inert, waiting for seasons to speak their names again. For in the heart of every winter sleeps the seed of the next, and in the bones of every dragon lies the dream of flight. But for this dawn, at least, the sky belonged to living wings, and the light of the rising sun spilled red gold across a world that for one breathless moment remembered how to hope. Awe, gahko. Ash mixed with thawing snow in the courtyards of Winterfell, turning the mud a bittersweet gray that clung to boots and stained the hems of every cloak. For 2 days the castle rang with the irregular cadence of hammers repairing shattered ramparts, the wail of saws fashioning makeshift coffins, and the low, stunned murmurs of men and women who had dreamt they would not live to see the pale light of another dawn. The bodies of the fallen, wildling spearmen from the frozen shore, watchmen in faded black, Northmen draped in the direwolf's gray, were laid on gurneys fashioned from broken gates. The weirwood's red leaves fluttered above them like silent witnesses, each leaf eye weeping scarlet onto the faces of the dead. Daenerys walked among the rows with a torch of witch fire carried high, its silver blue flame licking a tapered wick of pine resin. She paused at each bier, whispering a word in Balerion that meant voyage, pressing the torch to kindling, arranged beneath rigid hands. Flames leapt greedily, crackling in the hush. On the third row she stumbled, suddenly dizzy with the enormity of what still lived inside her heart. For every face she burned there flickered the memory of another, Dothraki who had died in Slaver's Bay, Unsullied who fell at Meereen's walls, Viserion spiraling into the abyss above the wall. The grief pooled in her chest like hot tar, threatening to drown breath. Only Drogon's distant rumble, soft as a mountain turning in sleep, kept her upright. The great dragon drowsed on the eastern battlements, wings furled, black scales crusted with scars that glowed faintly in sunlight. He allowed no one save his brothers Jon and Daenerys to approach. From time to time he exhaled a smoky cough, as if clearing memory's taste of ice. Beyond the funeral pyres the great hall had become a war council once more. Heat from massive hearths fought the stubborn chill that still seeped through stone. Jon stood beside the high table, shoulders squared beneath a repaired black leather hauberk, hair pulled back. Gray wind's pelt lay across his shoulders like the pasta's hand. Against one post Bran sat in a carved weirwood chair, eyes half closed, as if he looked upon a horizon none else could see. Arya paced with wolfish tension, still wearing the lightweight leathers she favored when scouting the lands between Winterfell and White Harbor. Sansa presided at the table's center, fingers loosely clasped, hair woven into an intricate braid crowned by a thin silver circlet shaped into leaping direwolves. Across from her Tyrion unrolled maps hastily supplied by Maester Wolkan. The Neck, the Trident, the Riverlands, King's Landing, the Reach scarred by drought. Davos Seaworth braced the far end of the parchment, his weathered fingers tapping impatiently whenever a draft threatened to fold the edge. Beside Davos stood Samwell Tarly, his ink-blotted maester's robe cinched at the waist, gaze darting between parchment margins and the faces of the living. His cheeks were still round, but no longer boyish. Lines of worry had carved faint rivers along the edges of his smile. Jon began. He spoke not of victory, but of the coming void. The Night King is gone, yet ice lingers in the bones of the world. The storm we broke will scatter pieces across every land, a frost to wither, a sickness to harden hearts. We must mend what shattered spells once held. We must mend what shattered spells once held. If we wait for southern lords to argue banners and borders, the debris of winter... Bran's lids fluttered. His voice drifted like wind over frozen water. He was a keystone. Remove it and arches tremble. But there are other stones in that arc, lesser, fissured, yet potent. Some wander the haunted forest wearing faces of storms, untethered. Some nest inside great caverns where the children once sang to roots. If a mortal with cunning enough to speak the cold tongue finds them, we dance anew. Dei? Arya halted, eyes narrowing. Then we hunt stones. We flash no banners, sing no songs. We find these remnants before they grow teeth. Davos said, rubbing the scars along his throat. Yet we cannot abandon King's Landing. The city smolders, and with it, the realm's heart. Balerion's bones tore the Red Keep like a bear tears honeycomb. No throne stands inside those halls, only rubble. Some say Queen Cersei died in the collapse. Others claim she fled to sea with Euron Greyjoy. Nintuan. A murmur rippled across the room. Tyrion's shoulders sagged with a grief he had hoped to bury. My sister endures misfortune like mold on bread. Do not presume rumor will kill her where dragons failed. We must confirm, Sansa said. The small folk starve. Grain stores burned, the granaries by the Guildhall crumbled. A plague of frostbite sweeps Flea Bottom, frostbite, in what should be the first blush of summer. If a ruler does not rise quickly to restore order, the city will devour itself. She met Daenerys' gaze as the queen entered, cloak shedding sparks of ash onto rushes. You fought for the living, they need you now. Daenerys hesitated, ash dusting her cheeks like faint freckles. I will go, she said, but no longer as conqueror, as healer. Her eyes flicked to Jon, and not alone. Jon knew the realm would watch where he walked, and how his hand brushed hers. In that glance he read a bond forged in storm and tempered in dragonfire, yet weighed by suspicion thicker than the wall once was. He nodded. We depart at dawn. A small retinue, Northmen, unsullied, wildlings who choose to ride. Tyrion will draft proclamation. Bran will send ravens. Sam cleared his throat. If the Citadel is willing, I can request grain ships from Old Town. The Tyrell storehouses were hidden in catacombs beneath the Hightower after the sack of Highgarden. Lady Olenna planned for lean years no one imagined. Tyrion arched an eyebrow. That old rose would cackle in her grave at saving King's Landing from starvation. Let her, Davos replied. Dead hands helping the living still count for help. Outside the walls, Gendry Waters, now Baratheon by decree of Queen Daenerys, worked side by side with Winterfell's blacksmiths. The clang of hammer upon steel rang steady, shaping half-moon shovel heads, replacement breastplates, nails for plank roads. Gendry's face gleamed with sweat, soot lining the crease between brow and cheekbone. Beside him, Talitha, a bare-strong woman from Skagos, pumped the bellows. Sparks spurted like fireflies. Capital needs tools, not swords, Gendry said, wiping his sleeve across his jaw. Yet I keep making both. Habit's a stubborn horse, Talitha snorted. The dead taught us swords dull quick. Better to keep edge ready. She hoisted a half-finished shovel, turning it beneath forge light. Though digging graves may need more iron than killing after that skyfire. A hush settled at mention of the skyfire. Everyone remembered the blinding blossom where the Night King burned. Some nights Gendry still saw it behind closed lids. The silhouette of man and monster intertwined like lovers sinking into flame. He quenched the blade in a trough, steam curling upward. You ever think on where souls go after? North folk say to the trees, rivermen to the rivers, red priests to the fire. Talitha shrugged. Skagosi carve runes for the sea to read. It whispers back sometimes, but I think souls go wherever their memories are strongest. She lifted her broad chin toward the ramparts, where Arya Stark stood alone, surveying distant foothills. If I burned like him, I'd haunt the wind until it carried a Stark name. Gendry followed her gaze, chest tightening. Their time in storms and ruins felt at once distant and immediate, the echo of a shared blade. Mixed courage and shame anchored his feet whenever Arya's eyes flicked across the yard. Brief sparks, then off, as though the connection frightened her as much as it scorched him. He returned to his hammer, shaping another edge against uncertain tomorrows. Far south at Storm's End, candles guttered in the high towers as a tempest built under a sky unnaturally glassy. Lord Garin Selmy, a distant cousin of the late Kingsguard Barristan, studied scrolls bearing the seal of Dragonstone. They commanded support for a humanitarian march upon King's Landing. Food wagons, healers, stonemasons. The words read reasonable, yet cold threaded Garen's spine. Dragons bore this parchment. Dragons, and a northerner wearing a bastard-forged crown. Old loyalties muddled. The Reach starved beneath lords slain or vanished. The Stormlands bled from battlefields salted by the Golden Company. And now, word whispered that Asha Greyjoy's longships harried the disputed lands, that Dorne mustered spears for no king at all. Garen turned toward the window where the first pricks of lightning crowned the far horizon. Old gods and new, he muttered. Send a storm to clear the rot. As if obeying, thunder answered. Yet there was rhythm inside the boom. A pulse like oars striking water. Garen's eyes widened. He leaned out, the arrow slit. The sea below churned, but not with wind. A fleet of ships, sleek and pale as bone, sliced through foam, sails painted with 3 twisting serpents. Garen swallowed bile. Euron Greyjoy had not fled. He had circled, carving spoils from Tyrosh and Myr, forging alliance with Sell-Sails who worshipped a drowned god no longer content with the sea. Rumors spoke of pyromancers captured in Tyrosh, their minds hollowed to fuel some monstrous new alchemy. The ships bristled with scorpion bolts tipped in glimmering green crystal. Lightning flashed again, illuminating a vast brass cage strapped to the lead ship's deck. Inside, chained and ragged, something moved. Wings cramped, scales dulled, yet unmistakably alive. A young dragon, copper-scaled, perhaps stolen from some remote clutch. Its eyes gleamed not fiery gold, but an eerie glassy white. Garen felt as though winter itself looked back at him. The battering rams lashed to the prow bore not ram heads but effigies of drowned priests, water streaming from eye sockets like tears. He staggered away from the window whispering, "Another storm comes." On the King's Road north of the Trident, Daenerys' procession advanced beneath banners half forgotten. The leaping stag of Baratheon painted anew for Gendry. The snarling kraken of House Seagrun, a minor Ironborn clan that had bent knee after Asha's parley. The drake wings of House Blackmont from distant Dorne. And at the column's heart, a silver dragon and a grey deerwolf entwined. Some watchers cursed, remembering the Dragon Queen's first arrival in Westeros and the chaos that followed. Others wept in relief, moved by the promise of bread caravans rattling behind. Jon rode Ghost, no saddle, the great direwolf's fur matted but clean of clotted gore. Ghost's red eyes scanned hedgerows with ceaseless vigilance. At Jon's flank strode Tormund Giantsbane, beard woven with bright blue beads taken from free folk seers who claimed they trapped visions of coming summers. Tormund puffed each breath in theatrical clouds. "Strangest thing," he said. Voice a gravel roll. "I thought when the ice demon cracked, the cold would slink back to the ends of the world. Yet last night I pissed, and steam rose off snow like breath off a giant's arse. The ground is warm underneath." Jon lifted an eyebrow. Meaning the world fights inside itself, heat pockets under frozen crust. When the crust splits, we'll see floods, maybe spawn of fire where we thought only ice. Jon exhaled. He had seen such spawn in Bran's vision. Fissures bleeding plumes of steam across the frostfangs, geysers bursting through permafrost. The land convulsed, uncertain which face it wished to wear. "We adapt," he said. As we always do." Tormund grinned, teeth flashing. You Southerners have soft words. Northmen say, we eat the storm before it eats us." He issued a booming laugh that startled passing farmers bowed beneath sacks of winter oats. Daenerys rode ahead on a mailed courser, her silver braid snapping like a pennon. On the third night they camped at Maidenpool. The town's timber palisade bore char marks from skirmishes with Lannister fugitives. Lady Mooten greeted them with wary courtesy, her left arm in a sling, victim of a stray quarrel when Golden Cloaks, cast loose from King's Landing, raided the granary weeks prior. "We'll pledge stores," she told Daenerys in the lantern glow of her hall, "but my people fear dragons may bring more fire before King's Landing recovers." Daenerys' gaze dropped to the timber floor where a hound slept curled around a hearth. "The fire we bring is to warm hearts, not raise them. When I came first, I believed fear would quicken peace. That was vanity. Flame untempered turns all to ash. She reached to the hearth and lifted a single coal with iron tongs, setting it in a small brass brazier. In the coal's soft glow, she placed a handful of dried lavender. Smoke curled fragrant. Let this scent reach your town walls. I will return to prove its meaning. Lady Mouton inclined her head. Under any other roof, a gesture so humble from a queen might have seemed token. But in a hall still bearing soot scars from old war, the moment glimmered like morning dew. While the caravan slept, Bran's ravens winged south first. They split across 3 courses. One flight to Old Town with Sam's plea for granaries, another to Sunspear seeking Princess Ariane's quills on a treaty of mutual aid, a third to King's Landing itself. The last flock wheeled above the capital at dusk, black silhouettes crossing a horizon the color of bruised wine. Flea Bottom endured smoky twilight, fires smoldering under collapsed thatch. Balerion's path of ascent remained a gouge through the city's veins. The hill of Rainy split, the Dragon Pit's dome a pulverized shell. Refugees camped in its shadow, building shanties from masonry rubble. Merchants did brisk trade in stoneware slivers once part of the skull crypt, hawking them as miracle charms for frostbitten limbs. Above the gutted Red Keep, a tangle of lumber formed scaffolds where surviving stonemasons sought to stabilize towers, listing like cracked teeth. From one such perch, Braun of the Blackwater chewed a sourleaf stem and glared at the chaos. 2 sellswords argued about pay behind him. A third roasted rat on a spit. King's Landings never looked worse, Braun muttered, then spat red into the dust. And that, friends, is truly fucking impressive. He plucked a raven feather from his boot. Ravens perched everywhere now, thick as fleas, dropping messages that no one bothered to read. I've seen whores cleaner than those birds, he added. But his mind ticked angles as always, with Circe gone, or missing. Thrones were chairs waiting for coins. And he, gods damn it, was owed a castle. Behind Braun, the quiet footsteps of Podrick Payne approached, armor patched with mismatched plates. Pod bowed. Sir Braun, he began. Lady Sansa's ravens say the queen in the north marches here with relief grain and 2 dragons. Braun's brows rose. Dragons again, do they never tire? He flicked the feather into a brazier. Ash swirled upward, mingling with countless others. Tell your lady dragons are welcome. But a castle's what I want for guarding their feed troughs. Pod nodded, half smiling. I'll remind her. He gestured at the city. You've kept peace better than any gold cloak. Braun scoffed. Peace? Its hunger keeps them quiet. He gazed southwest where, across the Blackwater Rush, smoke still puffed from the burned remains of the Dragonstone supply barges. Lannister loyalists had torched on retreat. But hunger can switch who it obeys. And soon enough, they'll look to the first person who gives them bread. His eyes glinted with a thought he did not voice. King's Landing might crown a queen who brought no terror, a bastard of winter and a mother of fire, if the hyenas lurking in alleys did not devour hope first. In the Dornish marches a rider spurred across blistering sands that should have been cooling toward twilight. Yet the dunes radiated heat like hearthstones. The mare he rode foamed at the bit. When he reached the shadow of Will's tower, he dismounted and stumbled through the iron-studded gate, clutching a scroll. Inside the hall of cracked quartz pillars, he knelt before 3 figures cloaked in undyed wool, their faces hidden by cowls. They listened without movement, while the rider gasped out tidings. The Night King perished in northern flame, yet the frost he birthed seeps south. Our waterholes shrink, crops wilt in spectral cold by dawn, and rumors speak of Greyjoy ships sailing with a dragon enslaved. The tallest of the 3 pulled back her hood. Dark eyes rimmed by kohl glittered. Princess Ariane of Dorne pressed hennied thumbs together in thought. Give Greyjoy time, she murmured. He'll hammer at the capital, but we must watch the shadows he casts. Some may hide daggers longer than the Kraken's arm. She looked to her companions. Lady Nymeria Sand, hair bound with golden wire, and Illyria Sand, face creased but eyes fierce. They had risen from grief for Oberyn to shape a new Dorne, unbound from petty vendettas. Now winter's ragged claws pricked their sands. Ariane nodded once, decision carved in the air. Have the water gardens emptied, every child under 7 sheltered in the caverns beneath sandstone. She turned to the rider. Send ravens back. Dorn rides. We will not let the north bleed alone, nor let the ironborn steal flame for shadow. At Winterfell, Rhaegal's wounds knitted slowly. Maester Walken brewed salves of pine pitch, powdered obsidian, and dragonbone marrow. Ground to dust, a recipe whispered by Missandei, before she sailed east months past. The salve hissed against Gale, producing acrid smoke that burned eyes and throats. Yet the dragon lay still, trusting the small human hands, because Jon Snow stood close, one palm against a spiraled horn murmuring low words. When the last patch of membrane sealed, Rhaegal lifted his head, inhaled, and exhaled a gentle gust that ruffled Wolken's graying hair like a blessing. Jon exhaled as if freed from a tension he scarcely acknowledged. The bond between rider and dragon thrummed, a pulse in his wrists. In that moment, he understood Daenerys not simply by empathy, but by echo. A dragon's pain was a mirror. So too was its triumph. The revelation humbled him. When the moon rose that night, Bran rolled his chair onto the godswood roots and asked Jon to walk with him. Snow dusted the branches, though the air tasted of thaw. Bran stared at the heart tree's pale face, its mouth a permanent red sap scream. You saw his eyes extinguish, Bran said quietly. Jon nodded. I saw more, Bran went on. When the flames devoured him, his essence rose like embers. It tried to scatter along ley lines older than hills. I pulled most back, bound them into the heart tree's roots, but some cinders escaped. They ride storm fronts now, seeds of sorrow, waiting for soil rich with fear. Jon felt the bark's ridges under his palm. Then we must be gardeners who starve the worst soil. His voice cracked on the metaphor. But what if war is all I know? What if by riding south with dragons we only fertilize those seeds? Nendor. Bran's eyes, no longer milky with visions but bright with brotherly warmth, soften. War forged you, but it is not all of you. The cure for winter is not endless summer. It is the turning of seasons. You and Daenerys are turning the wheel by choosing mercy after victory. Plant enough mercy, fear starves. His thin hand pressed Jon's. You taught me stories matter. Tell this story with gentler ink. Jon's throat tightened. He looked up at starlight, scattered between branches. Thank you, little brother. Bran smiled. I am not so little anymore. They laughed, and the night exhaled. 2 weeks into the march, the procession reached the battered gates of King's Landing. Smoke still crept from fissures in stone. The convoy halted while scouts announced the Queen's arrival. Small folk gathered along what remained of cobblestone streets, faces smudged, eyes hungry. Children perched on broken marble lions outside the Sept of Baelor, which had survived the earlier blast, yet now wore cracks like spiderwebs. As Daenerys rode Drogon's broad back above the main column, her shadow swept across them. Some flinched. Others reached upward as if to clutch that dark wing and hope it might elevate them too. Jon dismounted Ghost at the gate to greet Bronn, now styling himself Lord of Highgarden, if rumor could be believed. Bronn wore brigandine, studded with emeralds pried from Tyrell vaults. Well, well, he drawled. You rode early to the party. I've just gotten the ale flowing. He offered a wineskin. Jon declined. Bronn shrugged. Suit yourself. Queen's inside where throne used to be. If you can call that squat of stone, she's building a throne. Inside the Red Keep's remains, Daenerys stood on a platform of roughly hewn granite slabs the Unsullied had arranged atop the highest intact floor of the ruined throne room. Scaffolds creaked overhead. Sunlight poured through the gaping absence of a ceiling. Dust motes spiraled in golden shafts. Below, members of the city's guilds, stonemasons, fishmongers, healers, chandlers, waited for proclamation. Tyrion climbed the steps, unfurling a parchment. But before words left his mouth, a shout exploded from the gallery. Traitors! The voice belonged to a youth in torn red brocade, perhaps a scion of a petty noble. He lobbed a vial. It shattered against the edge of the platform, disgorging green wildfire in a plume. Flames whooshed up. Unsullied rushed to intercede, but more vials flew. From alcoves, from broken archways overhead, wildfire bloomed in wicked petals, trailing ghost-green tongues. John vaulted the stairs, drawing long claw as if steel could fight alchemy. Arya burst from a side corridor, blades glinting as she flung herself amidst conspirators. Ghost bounded ahead, crimson fangs bared. Yet wildfire knows no foe nor friend. Flames raced across debris, igniting fresh pockets where pyromancer caches had hidden for years. Daenerys watched fury spread as if time froze. This city, always one spark away from inferno, now spit acid at the hand reaching to feed it. Something inside her, old, draconic, vengeful, rose to snarl. She tasted ash on her tongue again, heard echoes of bells from the day she had first unleashed Drogon upon these streets. The urge to answer flame with flame trembled in every heartbeat. Then Jon's voice cut through the roar. "Water wagons!" He turned to a line of small folk, clutching barrels intended for relief. "Roll them in." Rain barrels were toppled, muddy water sloshed across stone, dousing edges where wildfire hadn't yet latched. Unsullied beat flames with cloaks stripped from their own shoulders. Arya sliced through a conspirator's throwing arm, disarming him before the next vial flew. Ghost harried them into surrender. Daenerys inhaled sharply. The destructive part of her quieted, cowed by the sight of northerners and small folk, forming a living chain. Buckets passing hand to hand, water splashing charred marble, 1,000 throats shouting directions. When at last the final emerald flame hissed out amid steam. Smoke drifted in lazy spirals. In that hush, Daenerys stepped forward until her boots stood in soot. She addressed the crowd. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "I once believed fear would build a better world. I was wrong. Fear builds nothing. It scorches the very seeds we need to grow. This city burned because of my dragons and because of a queen who wielded fear like a sword. I will not add to those ashes. I will plant where I once scorched. I ask you to plant with me. In return, you will have bread before blade, healing before whip." Banter. A silence followed, heavy as anvils. Then an old washerwoman raised a withered fist. "Plant bread trees, Dragon Queen." Cackling laughter rippled. Another voice, Barleycorn, a fisherman missing 2 fingers, shouted, "Give us nets, we'll fill your tables." A ripple of talk grew into applause, tentative at first, then swelling like surf upon shore. Tyrion exhaled, shoulders unclenching. He crumpled the parchment. Words prepared yesterday meant nothing after sparks of today. New lines would need writing. That had always been Tyrion's task, rewriting ruin into possibility. He met Bronze Eye across the hall. The sellsword shrugged. "Guess I'll keep my castle on hold." Evening's deep purple settled over the capital, and Drogon perched atop the skeletal remains of the Tower of the Hand, outlined black against a sky just touched with new stars. Rhaegal circled lower, testing mended wing beats, sending gusts that rattled scaffolding. Fires for cooking dotted back alley courtyards rather than flames of riot. Healing tents rose in the dragon pit. Dornish water caravans arrived under moonlight, escorted by Nymeria Sand's silent archers. Across rooftops, shadows flitted. Arya's network of children, ragtag, sparrows of the wolf, delivering messages, locating hidden wildfire caches. In the painted chamber, now roofless yet alive with torchlight, Jon and Daenerys sat opposite each other at a table, salvaged from Tyrion's broken office desk. Ghost snored at the doorway. On the table lay a cracked dragon figurine once part of Aegon's map. Daenerys traced a fissure in its neck. "Our realm mirrors this carving," she said, "held together by threads, yet waiting for some final blow." She looked up, eyes shining. "We can't be that blow. We must be the mortar." Jon nodded, fingers laced. "Then we begin with trust." He took the broken figurine, set its halves flush, and wrapped them with a strip of linen. "Tomorrow, we meet Bronn, the guild leaders, the faith's new septon. And we propose a council, lords and commons alike, to draft laws giving bread a louder voice than daggers. Call it a seed council." She smiled, weary but genuine. "Some lords will scoff at farmers voting, so we feed them until their mouths are too full for scoffing." Outside, Tyrion leaned against a shattered arch, eavesdropping with bittersweet amusement. He sipped diluted arbor gold from a chipped goblet. "Seed council," he mused. "Better than small council these days." When Sansa emerged from the stairwell, he offered the cup. She declined, folding arms. "They will need me in the north. But the queen will need northern grain chains." Her gaze fell on Jon, laughing quietly inside. "Keep him from drowning in oaths," she told Tyrion. "I shall try," he said. "He has a habit of leaping into currents others merely test." "Stark trait," she answered. Then, almost softly, "We learn to swim." Their eyes met with shared history. Sansa turned away, cloak swishing, headed toward the ward where survivors from the wildfire attack recovered. Tyrion watched her descend, admiration settling like a stone in still water. Across the narrow sea, in the city of Volantis, the Red Temple's braziers blazed at midnight. A congregation knelt as a red-robed priestess addressed them, voice echoing under the painted dome. Azor Ahai's shadow lifted and light prevailed, yet dawn is fragile. The great Utter's remnants scatter like shards of black glass, seeking midnight to mend them. She raised her hands, palms blood-red under fire glow. "We must carry flame to every land, lest cold claws back." Lurking behind her, masked figures exchanged glances. Some of these shadows had struck bargains with Ironbank men who saw opportunity in future wars. Coin clinked softly beneath their robes. Out at sea, Euron's fleet prepared siege engines. The captive dragon, its name whispered as Vermax, snarled behind iron bars etched with glyphs dredged from forgotten Balerion spellbooks. Pyromancers in broken chains hammered bronze tubes, filling them with wild green gel that sizzled like living serpents. Euron walked among them, humming a sailor's dirge. Around his neck hung a pale blue charm, a splinter of ice from the frost fangs, its veins pulsing faintly. Whenever he fingered it, the captive dragon's eyes glazed, limbs slackening as though puppeted. "Hush now," he crooned. "Your fire and my sea will sire storms together." He looked toward the coast of Blackwater Bay where King's Landing's lights shimmered. "Let's see if the Dragon Queen still knows which ones to save." His laughter rolled like thunder beyond horizon. On a dawn saffron bright, Arya stood atop the still crumbling tower of the rookery, breeze tugging strands of hair free from her knots. Below, the city buzzed with reconstruction. She inhaled charred dust and briny river stench, but beneath it a whiff of fresh bread. Strange, she thought, a smell almost forgotten here. A raven alighted on the parapet near her boot, tattered parchment tied to leg. The handwriting was Bran's single line. "Stone wolves roam north beyond the shattered tower at last hearth." Her pulse quickened. Stone wolves. A cryptic warning only siblings might share. She turned, descending the stairs in long leaps. Adventure's call thrummed, a tune she'd not heard since leaving Bravos. King's Landing might yet need knives and shadows, but the North's wild silence called louder for a hunter. She would answer, for ghosts of winter did not die with their king. At the stables, she saddled a lean shadow mare, securing supplies, water skin, a spare dragonglass dagger hidden in boot. Jon found her cinching straps. "Must you leave amidst rebuilding?" he asked. She met his eyes. "Always another battle." He exhaled, then hugged her. "Find me in spring. If spring finds us first." She countered, smirk tugging. She swung astride the mare, trotting through the morning gate, disappearing down the King's Road north, where frost still painted grass tips silver. In the sept of Baelor's surviving crypt, Septon Allard recited prayers above a small cairn of stone. No body, for none was recovered, dedicated to Sandor Clegane. Sansa stood beside him. The hound had never sought grace, but he had given it on a burning night when she had needed saving. She knelt, placing a single white rose on the cairn. In those petals, she poured unspoken gratitude. When she rose, She caught Brienne of Tarth's approving nod from across the nave. Brienne now commanded the Queen's Guard, its ranks filled by Podrick, Davos, Nymeria Sand, a free folk shield maiden named Thistle, and Grey Worm. 7 sworn swords. An echo of an order once steeped in gold, but now alloyed with every color of survival. Brienne approached, armor polished to faint glimmer. "A raven from Tarth," she said. "My father has died. I must return." Sansa clasped her wrist. "Go. Your vows bind you to more than these walls." She squeezed Brienne's calloused fingers. "Tarth's lords will follow your banner if war returns. But return when you can. The realm needs honor." Nemutor signed. Brienne's stern visage softened. "Honor grows stronger here now, my lady. I will water its roots where I travel." She strode away, cloak trailing blue silk. Night deepened, and Jon climbed the ramparts where the new Myrish lens Tyrion had fitted, served as a rudimentary lighthouse. He found Daenerys gazing across the city. Below, lamplighters trudged through ruined streets, sparks blinking to life after generations of enforced curfew. She spoke without turning. "Do you ever wonder if our lives were guided by stories we never consented to? Prophecies, songs, omens pressing us toward finales. Others chose? Nay." Jon leaned against parapet stone, rough beneath fingertips. "Prophecies set stage lights, but we still speak our lines." He paused, searching for words not sharpened by war. "If anyone writes this tale, they may call you breaker of night. But I'll remember a girl who burned her feet crossing the Dothraki Sea and kept walking anyway." She smiled faintly. "And I'll remember a boy with a name half the world scorned who carried it like a banner no storm tore." She reached for his hand, fingers entwined. Far across the dark water, a flicker of green erupted in silence. One of Euron's scouts testing wildfire charges. Its reflection shimmered on Jon's sword pommel. The peace blossoming below looked fragile in that moment, a glass garden under hail. Yet the clasp of their hands felt stronger than the tremor of distant peril. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "Stones, seeds, and bread." Jon squeezed. "And maybe songs." High above them, Drogon watched the sea, nostrils tasting currents. Rhaegal banked near the moon, silhouette wheeling. Somewhere north, Arya urged her mare faster. Ravens flitted with secret warnings. Stark ghosts stirred in crypt dust. Somewhere south, a copper dragon wailed under Kraken banners. The wheel of seasons turned, leisurely for men, swift for gods. But it turned, and within that turning, 2 hearts, one fire-born and one frost-forged, beat in imperfect harmony, daring winter's remnants to break them. As night yielded, inch by stubborn inch, to the first bleak glow of false dawn, King's Landing felt the subtle shiver of a realm inhaling, gathering breath for whatever song the day would require.